Good evening, Cindy. My name is Devon, and it's an honor for me to meet with you this evening in order to interview you, learning about your candidacy for the supervisory role. I would like to start off by asking you a question about the roles and responsibility of a supervisor.
Great. So the County Board of Supervisors in the state of California, there are 58 counties, and every county has 5 board members except San Francisco that has 7. I'm running for the district that represents the downtown and the east side and the southeast side of San Jose. So this supervisorial district is entirely within the city of San Jose. The county is a really big organization. It's got about a budget of about $4.6 billion with 15,000 employees. And counties mainly handle 4 areas of work: healthcare and health services. So in the county of Santa Clara, we have the Valley Medical Center, a number of clinics, prevention, all of that.
Wow.
We have another area of work that's women and children and families, and that's foster care, SNAP program, food stamps, WIC for newly pregnant folks, foster care.
Yes.
And then we have roads and airports. The County of Santa Clara has 3 airports it manages: one in Palo Alto, one in San Jose, and one in San Martin. And then another big area of work is the criminal justice system. So that is the courts, the district attorney's office, the sheriff's, probation, and the Department of Corrections that manages the county jail. So it is a very big enterprise.
Wow, it is a big role. I did not realize that. So it's 6,000 employees. So
15,000.
Oh, 15.
15,000. And why that's important is that when I served on the San Jose City Council and I was vice mayor there, our budget ranged from between, I think $2 billion to almost $3 billion. So one of the reasons I decided to run is I really felt like I was the only candidate who had experience dealing with very large budgets.
Yes, I think so too. So then, given such a huge role, could you outline for us the roadmaps, your visions into the future, should you be elected for this role?
So when I've spoken to the community about what's happening in this district, the number one thing that has come up has been crime. In San Jose, we have seen a huge spike in burglaries, in car theft, in violent crime. The second area has been healthcare. We have a lot of families in our community that are on fixed incomes, a lot of seniors, and they want to know how they can get access to affordable, quality healthcare. So that area is really significant. There's a lot of feedback about jobs as well. A lot of interest in making sure that there's economic opportunity for everybody in our community. And among the Vietnamese community in particular, there's been a very big interest in developing a community center. And so and especially given that San Jose has the largest Vietnamese population of any single city outside of Vietnam. So even though Orange County may be larger, and I know Dallas has got a lot of Vietnamese folks, San Jose is very unique in terms of the role and relationship to the Vietnamese community.
Wow, I did not know that. Thank you for letting us know. So then, could you talk maybe in general about the current program that I know that you already touched on like programs that would help the Vietnamese community in particular. Mm-hmm. So what are the current programs that would benefit us, given that our issues being in crime, in healthcare, and in community center? And then what are the additional programs that you think you may be able to bring?
So that's an excellent question. One thing I would say is that the County of Santa Clara over the next year will have about 1,500 employees retire or resign. The following year it should be closer to 2,000, and the following year another 2,000. And part of the reason for that is that you know, we are at the baby boomer
Yes.
stage, and we're starting to have people move on to retirement.
Right.
What that means is that there will be a lot of job openings in the county, and so one of the things that I really want to work on is making sure that we are hiring people who are culturally and linguistically appropriate for the work. And when you look at how diverse Santa Clara County is, that means a very diverse workforce.
Wow, yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so I would want to make sure that we set some goals to make sure that we can, you know, achieve that diversity goal.
Yes.
And you know, and I know that we have to do all of this within the law, but really in order to provide quality services to our parents, our grandparents, you know, having people who speak Vietnamese, Tagalog, Spanish is really critical, and to make sure we have people who are skilled enough for those jobs.
Yes.
So one big area of focus for me is going to be making sure that we're hiring people who are appropriate for those roles.
Yes, that's great.
In terms of, you know, we talked a little bit about the community center. Represents the downtown and the east side and the, but one other area that I think would be really important to take a look at is going to be around crime. And, you know, for example, I did not know this, but we only have one investigator in the public defender's office that speaks Vietnamese.
Oh, wow.
So what that also tells me is that if we really want to have a fair justice system, we need to make sure that we have people, again, who are culturally and linguistically skilled
Right.
to be able to reflect the community that lives here.
Yes, that sounds like that's a good outlook. And so, so in particular for the LGBT community, are there a lot of employees who are in that community, LGBT?
You know what, that's a great question, because I think in certain programs there are.
Yes.
But I would also say that I think Santa Clara County has done a really good job of saying to the LGBT community, we're for you. You know, we want you to be a part of this community. As you probably know, the rainbow flag has been flying over Santa Clara County for a very long time,
Right.
and the city of San Jose. In fact, I was at the city of San Jose with now board chair Ken Yeager, who is the highest ranking openly gay person in local politics here. And you know, Supervisor Yeager is a big supporter and an endorser, but also somebody who's really led the way
Yes.
for gay folks to run for office. So, so I'm very excited about that.
Yes, those would be like big, good role models for us.
Yes. Now, but the question you ask is a really good one, and I don't know how the county addresses that. That'd be something for me to investigate, because in some ways, as you know, what's challenging, I think there are probably some programs that having people who are culturally aware is very important. But I also think that we have a lot of people in the gay community who are not as open about their sexuality.
Yes,
And they, you know, so I'm not sure, but I'll have to ask Ken what he thinks.
I mean, it's like in the workforce, I know that a percentage would have to be a minority, you know, like just the status.
Right.
So I just wonder, like, is there, maybe there should be a policy like that.
Right,
You know,
we'll have to
percentage
think
should
about
be,
it,
you know,
yeah.
like women, certain percentage should be minorities, and then the LGBT community, so on and so forth. That'd
Well,
be
and you
great.
know, one other thing I'll say, I think, you know, again, Ken's done a very good job of making sure there's funding in public health around, especially around issues relative to AIDS and AIDS awareness. The other issue that I know he's very focused on is violence in our homes, and that is an issue, whether you're gay or straight, that we have to really address violence in the home. One last thing I'll mention that I think is probably really important is that I think making sure that we are really fighting discrimination in all of its forms. And the reason I say that is that I think, you know, in some ways the discrimination against the gay and lesbian community is more insidious because it's sometimes harder to prove and,
Yes.
right? And so it would be very important for us to take a look at that as well. I have to give that some thought.
Yes. But then if it's so hard to prove, and how to go about discovering that would be
Right, now,
tough.
Right, but you know,
there's ways.
right,
There's
we
will,
have to,
there's a
we have
way.
to, we have to, that's right, we have to think about it. I think the other thing too is making sure that the county is a good employer, right? Very open to making sure that, you know, gay couples are treated the same way as straight couples, and that we really look at the county as a family that is really not just tolerant of differences, but really embraces them.
Yes. And so I was thinking of the other candidate, your opponent, and you. You both supported the LGBT community, and yet you were being endorsed and supported by the
BayMac.
And could you let us know a little bit how come, you know, like why such a strong
So
support?
my activism with the gay community started in the late 80s. And so as a community activist, I worked very closely with the gay and lesbian community, mostly on anti-discrimination work at the time. When I was elected to the San Jose City Council, the year I got elected, the Night Initiative was on the ballot. And I don't know if you remember that initiative, but it was really an attempt at further discrimination with the gay and lesbian community. There was a statewide campaign committee called the No on Night Initiative. One of my friends was running the campaign, and he called me and he said, I need your help. Like, we're gonna lose and I need your help, and I need you to stand up for us.
Oh.
And I was a new elected official, and of course people advised me, don't do it. You know, the public's not ready, you're gonna push the envelope, blah, blah, blah. And of course I did it. So, and then when I was on the city council, we had a policy to make sure that we treated same-sex couples and their families the same way we treated all, and really being committed to civil rights in every way that was imaginable. And it isn't to say that, you know, I don't know enough about when she started to get engaged, but this has really been something that's been a core value. So when it comes to the activists of this community, I've been on the firing lines with them, literally.
Oh, that is awesome. The audience, of course, would love to hear that of your fight for us, for them. So then, taking a step back, thinking as a Vietnamese community in general, what are, let's say if we have issues or concerns, what are the steps or procedures for us to, what are the channels we can go through in order to bring issues to the table, to alert the city council or, you know, certain government officials, rather than having to sit with the hunger strikes or, you know, demo and
right. You know, first of all, you know, I have spent and really being committed to civil rights in every way, and some of my life in the labor movement, so I'm sort of used to the strikes and to the action. But that being said, you know, I think registering to vote and voting, because you know, when you go to a meeting and you are there with 5 other people, 10 other people, if you can organize 10 people, you're ahead of 90% of our community, right? But if you've got 10 people, you're all voters, you can make a meeting with an elected official and go air your grievances. You can talk to them about what your issues are. You can create a petition. You can write a letter. You can apply to be on a board or commission in an area you really care about. Commission on the status of women, the commission on the planning commission, on the Library and Parks Commission. There are all these different ways to make sure your voice is heard. You can run for office. Because the fact of the matter is, you know, we are government. We are the government, and if we don't jump in, then we have not a lot of complaining to do, right? Because
yes,
that's us, or you know, or frankly talking a friend into running and helping them do it. So I think running for office, being on a board or commission, writing letters, and then going to meetings. And the other thing I would say is building coalitions, because one challenge I think all of us have is that, you know, for example, the gay and lesbian community, if the Vietnamese community is gonna have a fight over an issue, the gay and lesbian Vietnamese community is a community this big. The gay and lesbian, bisexual, transgender community in all of San Jose is this big. In Santa Clara County, it's this big.
Yes.
And when that group says, you know what, we want the support of the Democratic Party, it gets this big. We want the help of the labor movement, it gets this big.
Right.
And so I think really building those coalitions and building deep, authentic, meaningful relationships across the table,
Yes.
across the aisle, really with new friends is the most powerful thing we can do.
Great. That's a very good guidance. We'll take notes and take that to heart. That's really great advice. So then specifically for the LGBT community, we were very happy with the DOMA decisions and the Proposition 8. Can I think about DOMA? Oh, DOMA is the Defense of Marriage Act, as we all know. And so, because my understanding is that because the higher court is pushing the implementation of, the gay marriage to the state level, and as I understand, humans tend to err, and so what are the ramifications to that, and what could be the potential issues for this kind of implementation, and how could we organize or take steps to protect ourselves?
So one is I would say I still have a lot to learn to understand it, but here's what I believe. What I believe is that the court's decision will allow fights to continue to happen state by state instead of taking a very broad federal approach. Now, I also think though that with California being such a large state, and with New York and other states that are moving forward with these very progressive laws, that I kind of feel like we're going to be back in court again. I hate to say it because I know that, and it may not be coming up from the California courts, but because really, and I'm not an expert on this at all. In fact, what I would recommend, and I would love to hear it, is to hear a couple of lawyers sort of, talk us through how to be prepared for this. But my reading of it was, in California, we're going to be fine.
Yes.
We're going to, everybody's going to be able to get married, and the laws are going to be fine. I do worry, and other states are going to have to. I mean, what they're supposed to do is accept, the license from another place. They would from my husband and I. But I don't know what this means for our fight. I do know it means it's not over, but I think this is the first time in my adult life that I have felt on this issue that we finally have the wind to our backs, right?
That is true.
Momentum,
Yes.
public opinion,
Acceptance.
Acceptance. Like,
And
I
this
feel
is
like
like
we're
a
going
real
right
blessing.
in the right direction, and really being committed to civil rights in every way.
Yes.
For the first time.
So. Yes. So there will be fights and there's some hardships, but given that certain clout has been dealt for us, we felt that we have certain blessing to move on.
Well, I'll tell you the other thing. For California, I think that for gay and lesbian couples from anywhere in the world, the best and the brightest are going to come live here. I think it's going to be great for our economy.
Oh,
I really do.
great.
Like, I think other states are going to miss out because, it would be like a whole state excluding Latinos or Vietnamese. It's silly. Like, who,
Yes.
if you think about the international stage, do you want to be disadvantaged by not having
Right.
everybody you can?
Yes.
No.
Yes. Well, this state is very diversified, and it's such a good thing about California. That's what I
Agreed.
love about it, yes. And then I think all the pretty good issues are out of the way. So I saved the best for last. I don't know. And so there are there's a question about given your background and your opponent's background, right?
Mhm.
You're both Hispanic women, Democrat, supportive of union. What makes you think that you would be a better candidate? So this is kind of subject.
Sell yourself. You know, what I would say is that I have more experience. I have served on the San Jose City Council for 8 years. I was vice mayor for 2. I served as the chair of the Valley Transportation Authority, and I served on that board for 8 years. So that's BART, light rail, buses, bus rapid transit for our region. It's the construction of BART. So, you know, and the county is so big, and because of the sudden loss of Supervisor George Shirakawa, you start day one. You get to work right away, and so I think that, you know, that I have the experience it will take to make sure that the poorest and the neediest people in our community are heard and supported.
That's a great mission. So it's about the pension, the San Jose Mercury News, because it's a public piece of article opinion. So we feel like we would like to put it on the table and ask you that they quoted the pension debt of about 1.5 billion, and it's due for the government spending on the union members, and so it's clearly, it's meant to attack, right? So we'd like to hear like whether that's accurate, and we'd like to hear your reply, feedback, and explanation.
So let me say what is accurate about it. County employees invest money, every paycheck, into retirement and into their retiree health benefits. And so what happens is when the county puts in money, the employee puts in money, and then over the life of the time that they invest in it, when they leave, they have what's called a defined pension.
Yes.
And a defined benefit from a healthcare perspective. The county has a $3 billion deficit relative to pensions and unfunded liabilities for healthcare. Now, part of the reason for that is when the economy got really rough, rather than cutting services, because the county provides services to the most needy,
yes,
it didn't pay into its portion of the unfunded, its portion for health benefits and for pensions, or paid at a lesser level. So here's what needs to be done about it. The union, the community, financial experts, and the county need to come together and look at all of the options to bring that debt down. And there are many. Employees may need to put in more. The benefits may actually need to change. The strategies for investment may need to change. Now, the pension is a different issue, because over the lifetime of pensions, because all of us invest something, you know, whether it's our defined pensions or benefits or 401k, we all see the market kind of rise and set. This was a terrible, tragic dip. And you know, we had a lot went wrong on Wall Street that actually hurt Main Street, right? So the Wall Street shenanigans actually impacted all of our,
that is true. Yes,
you know, our
even my 401k.
That's right. So now the question is, and for those people whose 401k, you know, who they were retiring, and this was the year they were going to leave, you know, retire, and they dipped, they stayed at work, right? Or they're doing an extra job. For these funds, they're so large that the period over which they are and really being committed to civil rights in every way, 30 years. So as it relates to the pensions, different investment strategies perhaps, and perhaps as new employees come in, doing something different with those so that we can start to control costs.
Yes.
But the pensions are less scary. What is more scary is the unfunded liability for healthcare, and here's why. What happens is, like, I'm a county employee, and I'm paying into my healthcare. After I've been at the county for 15 years, I get lifetime healthcare for myself, not for my family member, not for anybody else.
Yes.
And every month, every paycheck, I'm putting money in, the county's putting money in, and that's for that health care benefit. The challenge is that over a 30-year period of time, nobody knows what health care is going to cost in 30 years. So when you look at the way that we're saying, okay, in 30 years, this is what it's going to cost to make sure that I and everybody who's working here right now has health insurance. So again, we're going to have to look at contributions, we're gonna have to look at who contributes what, we're also gonna have to look at that benefit. Is it a benefit that we can afford? And and how does that benefit exist in a future world with Obamacare? So there's a lot more research that needs to be done, but let me be clear, it is a huge problem. We've got to deal with it right away, and even if the solutions we come up with today are not 30-year solutions, because frankly, enough could change there, but what we know we can't do is we can't have an unfunded liability hanging out there that we haven't fought to get lower. Now, some people say, oh my gosh, she's so for the unions, how will you do this? Here's the fact. The fact is that everybody in government understands it needs to be sustainable.
Yes.
Union members understand that too. We all want the county to survive, and we have to bring everyone together in a way that really does reflect our values, a value of doing something that is fair for the employees, sustainable for the county, and still allows us to provide the highest quality of services with the best people we can get.
Yes, yes. But do you think in the next, do you see that the deficit will get reduced, like in the next few years?
It has to, because the county's going to have to make some very tough decisions in terms of funding that deficit. So it's a $1.8 billion deficit today. You know, if we are very aggressive in trying to pay it down, we could stop the debt from growing as dramatically. But I frankly think, and there's no single answer. The problem, you can't just say, oh, we'll have the employees put in more. You could say, you know, we'll stop offering that benefit in that way for newcomers. There are a whole bunch of people that are already in the system that have contracts. They're retired, right? You can't change retirement under them. Besides that being immoral, it would be in court forever, right? So the truth is we have to look at, okay, what can we afford to do here on out?
Yes, I understand. So you mentioned about union, and to me, I mean, I'm very close to the mainstream, and I do not know the role of union for people like Vietnamese people, Vietnamese community. Can you care to?
Well, so there are many Vietnamese union members. So let me tell you.
Oh, well, that's right.
Yeah, so yes. This is true. So what unions do is that they are a way that people can act collectively to bargain for their salary and their benefits. So it's like an organization that people either join, establish. You know, they can establish a union in their workplace. But they are a way that allows people to act, to collectively bargain.
Yes.
And so act collectively.
Because we heard, again, the media, they painted a very, depressing image about union. Oh, they get paid this much and they demanded more and blah, blah. But individually, like people could benefit if they know that there's such a collective organization to fight for them.
Right, and let me give you an example. UPS, people at UPS is a union shop.
Yes.
Federal Express pays its workers very similar to UPS. It's not a union shop. If UPS didn't have a bottom to what they paid people, what would Federal Express do? And maybe they would keep paying people and treating people well, but my experience in this economy is not that.
No.
So I think part of it is that as a community, the Vietnamese community has had a number of leaders that have led in the labor movement here. In fact, a very long time ago, I met a woman by the name of Lam Luang, who I deeply loved, and she was an activist fighting for workers' rights, and another woman named Kang Tran, who's also a friend of mine. But what I learned from them was the value that people from Vietnam hold around democracy and human rights. Like that, it was in her heart.
Yes.
It wasn't something simply intellectual. It was in her heart, and I learned that from her. And I also learned that when you fight for human rights in Vietnam, it's a natural extension to fight for human rights in this country.
Yes.
And she fought for the rights of workers, a lot of Vietnamese workers who were not being treated fairly in a lot of our manufacturing here.
Yes.
So I think that our communities have more in common.
Yes, that's great. So we heard certain interview from your opponent, and she kept bringing the quote unquote transparency of the in the government in the city, and we do not know the background of such a remark. And would like to ask you, what does that mean to you?
I think for her, well, and I don't want to put words in her mouth at all, I've heard her speak about this. I think that because George Shirakawa, who held this seat, left under a cloud because he violated the law and he broke the public trust, I think that she's really raised transparency as a core promise to the public. The thing I would say about it, and I'll come back to the transparency issue, is I went out and I spoke with people. What they talked to me about was public safety, healthcare, jobs. And so I could talk to them about transparency, but that's not what they're talking to me about. Now that being said, when I served on the San Jose City Council, I served on a blue ribbon task force on ethics. And what we did is we put in some of the most stringent rules around gifts, around lobbyist registration, around some around transparency. We had a revolving door ordinance so people couldn't quit their work, come back in a month and work on a project that they were working on for the city, for the private sector. So we expanded the revolving door policy. All of that I did in 2004. In 2005, I established, before leaving office, the Sunshine Task Force. And as part of that task force, I made recommendations to the Sunshine Task Force that they make the city council and mayor's calendars public. That way you could look at what I've been doing the last week, who I met with, what time I met with them. And I think that's very important. And that's a reform that my opponent is advocating for now, that I established before I left the city of San Jose. So I like a lot of her ideas. They are things we implemented already.
Oh,
I think it's important to do it at the county as well, and I would
Yes.
absolutely take a leadership role in doing that. The purpose of being transparent, besides that it is a basic, in my mind, rule, right? If you look at like what challenges governments around the world, it really is corruption,
Yes.
right?
Yes, that's
So we've got to make sure we deal with it. But the purpose of those rules should be to make it easier for people to engage their government and hold us accountable.
Okay. Yes.
And so the rules I put forward and the ideas I put forward were things like making the calendars public, doing budget hearings, not just at City Hall, but doing them in neighborhoods, changing the rules so that people could go online and look to see what's going to be on the agenda, you know, a week in advance, and if it was a really big deal, 10 days in advance.
Yes.
And so I think that transparency is enormously important, but the importance of it is really hold me accountable and be able to really engage people because their government is open to them. In some ways, I think that transparency can be used as a ruse, and what I mean by that is it's almost like being able to look through a piece of plastic, but you get close to it and you smack your face into it. It's transparent. You can see what's happening on the other side, but can you engage?
Wow, that is important. Yes,
It's
that's a
hugely
good question.
important.
Yes, yes, great. Thank you very much because you answer more than my take of questions and then thanks to them. And I have a better idea of Cindy as a person, as the elected official. So what would be your message to the young Vietnamese women who aspire to be take part in the government system or try to become a public servant?
You know, if you go into a room and you asked a whole group of people whether or not they could run for office, the men would feel more qualified. If you said, are you qualified to run? The men would raise their hand and the women would sit with their hands on their lap. And I have done these trainings across the country for years. And here's what I would say for young women. We have so much to offer. We're smart, we do our checklists, we can be strategic, we juggle a lot of different things. And we can't wait for someone else to feel confident enough in us to ask us to run or to lead. That we have to rely on ourselves to get that energy, that confidence. And then we have to share it with other people, because if we wait, no one will ask us to get off the bench. But if we stand up and we're jumping up and down and we're waiting for our turn, and when they say, do you want to bat next? You have to say yes. Yes.
So be ready and seize the moment.
Seize the moment and follow your passions. Like the thing that makes politics fun isn't politics. It's, I deeply care about children, right? I deeply care about safety. Like, so I get up in the morning excited to go to work. And you have a lot of young women out there who have a vision for how to make this community better. They should volunteer, understand it, get to know it, and then push themselves.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're
That's a very nice
welcome.
message to the women. So then, on the other hand, what would be your message to a young lesbian who are afraid to come out and to, like, to be known and to strive for the best life that they can live?
I know it's harder for lesbians. I know that, and for people who are transgender, and I will not be glib about the challenge, but let me just make this point. When I ran for city council, I was only the second Latina ever elected. Now that's crazy in an area that's so diverse, that I would be the second anything. I was the first woman to be a mother on the city council. I don't mean to have children, I mean to be a mom, to get pregnant, and to have my son. I was probably the first elected official that breastfed at public meetings,
Wow.
I mean, for the city. And what I would say is, we have to think about our contributions in terms of generations. Because I knew that if I stuck up for my right to bring my son to work and take him to public meetings, it was going to be easier for the next councilwoman. And so, when Ken Yeager ran for office, and when he was not afraid to say he was gay, he not only opened the door for himself, but he opened it for all of us, right? Latinos, lesbians, Vietnamese, because every one of us who pushes a boundary creates more space for everyone behind us. And so it's going to be hard, but I would say find mentors, get connected, build those coalitions, because there are other people who will fight on your behalf.
Yes. Very, very strong message. It's really, really inspired